Read away your Honda key, Toyota key.
Howdy, you guys. Just to let you know I'm here.
Hi.
How many
You're
people
here.
normally come to the adult forum?
Not very many, quite
Like,
honestly. And Nancy Pullmanor always comes. She wasn't there. Art, I see, is here. Who else? Usually Gloria Hooper.
uh-huh.
It just depends on, it changes from time to time on what we're doing.
So it's just a handful.
Yeah, but I even
Okay.
have a hymnal.
Woo. Well, that's the book.
So were we using the same melodies, tunes, songs, not words, but music that like the whole country
You mean today?
today? Uh-huh.
No, I think that the
Just the
service was
diocese.
written by the diocese, and we borrowed that text and tune and the tunes.
'Cause I mean,
So
I've
it wasn't
never heard.
something. I didn't
That
know
Gloria
that
was-
either.
Well,
I
that
didn't know it,
Gloria was
but-
in like a minor key or something, and I'm thinking, it's a song of praise, and it's in a minor key. It was just, but it's interesting. Are we gonna?
It is
sing-
interesting. yeah.
Are we saying old songs next week?
Well, I didn't select these past ones, it came with the service, and usually I try to pick things that are familiar, right? So, but it shows you that other places, other things are familiar,
Oh, yes.
right?
Yes. Well, like I've heard lots of different doxologies and lots of different glorias. But I'd never heard that one.
I think it was composed pretty recently.
Yeah. Well, it was just odd that it was in a minor key.
Well, and had some rhythms that would be hard
Yes.
to do
And
without having been introduced to it.
yeah, and I read music, but
Right.
I couldn't read that. But I tried.
I understand. Yeah, I understand.
So Art, where are you?
I'm eating lunch. I've got the video turned off.
Ah,
They said they were going to record this session. I just didn't want them to record me eating lunch.
well, people in the future might want to know what Americans were eating in 2021, right?
Well, I just finished a half of a bacon sandwich, and I got recorded doing that once, and I didn't know that was. I felt so stupid.
Did it look that bad?
But
Oh,
yeah,
let's
this
see if
is
I can.
probably. Wait, do you mind doing it for two, or do you?
No, I don't mind. It's fine. Let me see. It's backlit. Let's see if it looks better. If you can see me better. Can you see me better like that?
No.
Oh, okay. Because the
You're
light's
fine.
going the wrong
You're
way.
fine.
Really?
Oh, we can see you fine.
Yeah, it'd be
Your
nice
face
if the
is
light
very
was coming this
dark.
direction. Let me just try
Yeah,
one.
your face is very dark.
Right. Well, how about that?
No, that's worse.
Oh,
Yeah, the other one
okay.
was better. I'm sorry.
All right. Well. Okay. So, should we just start, or do you normally wait a little while?
No, we'll go ahead and start. People might come in that are
Huh?
able to.
All right.
There's
So I'm
our,
curious. Hey, he's all revived. So today I thought we'd just talk a little about church music, and one of the most important things is our hymns, right? And so I thought first we should get an idea of what you think a hymn is. Can you tell me one of the hymns that's your favorite?
probably A Mighty Fortress Is Our God.
Whoa, all right. And Art, The Bread of Heaven?
David Allwine had a saying. He said, "Oh, that's one of my 437 favorite hymns."
Exactly.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
It's like saying you're my favorite sons, right? All
Good
of them.
analogy.
Yeah. So so when you think of, let's say, Amazing Grace or something like that, you think bum ba da da da, right? Amazing Grace. But I'm going to show you just quickly. This is a hymnal that I used to play out of in Cincinnati for the German Lutheran Church, and because they didn't need to publish another one, this one's from the 19th century, and it's a typical hymnal all the way back to even the Renaissance, more typical than what we use today.
Oh, yeah. Well, that would be hard to follow. Goodness.
These are the hymns.
Just the
Those are
words.
right. That's in fact your script too. So this one right here. Bum 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 da 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 da. You
Yeah.
have to sing it for
Oh,
Lent,
yes.
right? And the tune is "O Hauptvoll Blütenwunden," or actually "Herzlich dich vermählen." Probably that one. Which, okay, so our head is, "O Hauptvoll Blütenwunden und Sperzen voller Hohn." I can barely read it with these glasses. So, this is a hymn book. There's no music in the entire hymn book.
All right, the hymns are not the music.
That's right. The hymns are not the music.
No.
This is the music. It's in a separate book for this. And here it is.
Yes.
So if you can't make it up, then you use that book. Notice that it only has the first verse, but then you've got to be reading the words, not the music when you're playing. So this one, I'm just doing this for curiosity, has 10 verses.
Oh my goodness.
Right. And some hymns have repetition, you'll have the phrase and you'll have the same music again, but different words, right? Well, they don't write that music in there. They just assume you know to repeat it in the book. So when you're in verse 9, 8, you're like, oh, did I just play verse 8? Or did I, was it 7? Was it 9? Where am I? And you can't, you cannot a fish. You can't look at both at the same time. Put them here or something. So a hymn is basically a poem. And hymn writers are poets, often ministers and stuff like that. They may not be able to even carry a tune. And it's a very special form that's really difficult to write because it has to be short, right? And it has to say something significant. And everybody has to be able to understand it while they're trying to read the music or doing other things. So the first time they ever sung that hymn, they have to understand what the words are. Can you imagine how difficult that is? And then most people didn't have hymn books, which means that it has to be designed to be memorized.
Well, growing up, I'm a cradle Episcopalian.
Uh-huh.
We had the old prayer book was a little much smaller than, our hymn books were the same size.
That's right.
A different color, but it might just have the main notes of the, I really can't remember. It's been a long time ago and I'm old.
Well, we have the 1940 hymnal back here, if you want to see it.
Yeah, the little bitty.
No, but it's not small.
Yeah, they were little bitty and they just, I think, had the main notes of the
melody.
Melody. And not any of the other stuff. At least at first when I was very young, but then, yeah.
Well, you can see that in our Psalms. In the Psalms, they'll have the Psalm tune, often with no words, because you don't know which Psalm tune you're going to pick. And you just have the words written there, and then you have to point it, which means you have to figure out where to change note and stuff like that. Right? So that's actually a normal way to do it. And so, so when we think about I love hymns, we love poetry. Actually, it's kind of interesting. So what I thought we would do is just go through some examples of hymns and see what you think. Train you how to pick music a little bit. So do you see that document that I uploaded in Zoom or not?
No.
No.
Let me try one more time.
Everybody has trouble doing this.
Okay, it's there in the chat.
Sharing the screen.
Okay. So we open the chat.
Uh-huh.
Which one? There's a bunch.
It's the
of them.
same. It's the same one.
Yeah, I'm just getting a bunch of titles.
Yeah, it says something on the first page like contents, hymns, and stuff like that.
No.
No?
I
Okay.
get VHO, then EB WebView extensions. identity.
Okay, let's just go back to our cameras and I'll share my screen. I think that's better than spending our time trying to figure out Zoom. So Here we go. Can you see my screen? Oh, no. Can you see
Yes.
it? All right, great.
Now,
So
yeah.
this is the opening of our hymnal right here. Can you see me too?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. It's a little hard for me to do this because I don't have my reading glasses on. So that's how it's organized is by how you use them, actually. You see that they're holy baptism. The church year is one of the most important things that we have regular readings through a 3-year cycle that the sermon is often based on that. And so this is how we predict what hymns are probably going to be used and what hymns would be good to be used during the service, even if it's several months in advance. The sermons haven't been written yet, several months in advance generally. So, so that's one of the things that I wanted just to see. But we're going to move on to the next thing. Here. So this is a really important document right here set forth in the hymnal. It says, hymn singing is not one kind of music making, but many kinds. Of requirements of all hymns is that they can be performed by groups of people who do not have the benefit of regular rehearsal. Thus, memorability and simplicity are important to good hymn tunes. And when they're not, usually people complain, right?
Yeah.
Especially if it's like a Gloria that's very unfamiliar.
Yeah.
It is purpose rather than musical style which unites them. So the purpose is to have people say words that are bring to gathering together or thought or to listen to the gospel, whatever it is, some purpose, and sing it together. You can also memorize those texts, and that's something you can go back to when you have a problem or something like that.
Or when it's not all printed in the bulletin like
Where you only have half of Morning Has Broken. It really broke. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's the beginning of it. But then there's some other things that are kind of interesting too. Here it says on the next page, metronome markings have been provided by most of the hymns. I don't know if you know, the speed of the hymns are indicated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes people say, it's too fast, it's too slow. Well, if you look at the people who made this hymnal, they're the famous musicians of the whole Anglican and Episcopal Church and some Catholic people, the most famous musicians, all of them, they determine that tempo. So, but they say that's not necessarily the tempo that you'll need because of this reason and that reason and so forth. But that's a kind of basis for making those decisions. And then they outline how to use the hymnal for the musician, which is kind of interesting. If you don't like something about how a hymn is being done, you might go see, is it part of the tradition or is it reasonable or are they doing something here or doing something different? I mean, and there might be a reason why they're doing something different that's not in there. The whole congregation might be doing something different, but it's usually quite well thought out before you hear a service. So one of the issues is copyright. So what's nice is the hymnal has paid all these copyrights and gotten permission for us to sing them. I don't know if you know, but there's a copyright to perform something. There's a copyright to record it. There's a different copyright for broadcasting. Right? You can have one and not the other and stuff like that. And so this copyright permission is quite important because you would never want someone to use your words and like twist them around and do something you don't believe in. You know, Islamic people singing the song that you wrote, we wouldn't like that either. So there's some famous ones like in weddings, like The Sound of Music, people want to have that march. But the creators of that made it clear they don't want that and they don't want any words changed to it. And so they sued people in church. So so we actually have to pay attention to copyrights. And so if we need to do something, we can look up the copyright. So that's kind of interesting. Then one of these other ones is, yes?
I'm sorry, question. When they been written, 400 years ago, the hymns themselves, I understand the music, but the hymns themselves, how are those copyrighted?
Well, the words aren't copyrighted a lot of times if they're older, and nor is the tune, and many of the settings are not copyrighted and so forth. But you could have an old tune that someone new wrote some accompaniment to.
Okay, that I get.
Right. So this is the sources, so you can look it up and write the person or whatever. And there's some important ones like Hope Publishing Company. That's in Grand Rapids, and it's the Calvinist church. Kind of interesting. We never think of them. But it's from all sorts of places. There are presses, especially from Methodists and so forth. These are the authors, translation, and sources. It's significant because they're talking only about the texts, like who wrote the poem, right? And that's interesting. These are the composer who wrote the music that they selected for that poem, right? And some of these, like, you can see some of these guys are just super popular, right?
That Bach fellow has a long list.
Yeah, but so does like Kruger. You know, he has like 10 or so. And then you could ask, well, why did these famous musicians pick his setting? Like there may be 100 settings of that thing, or they could easily write their own, but they picked his. So when you don't like a setting, you're actually arguing against the best musicians in the United States, right? They selected what they think is the best for a hymnal of variety. That's not to say other ones aren't great and don't have a reason to be used. I mean, you've heard some alternative harmonizations before in church, I think, right?
Oh, yes.
Sometimes too many. One for every verse. I don't know who crazy musicians who would do that. Then the metrical index of tunes. Now we're getting into very useful stuff. Do you guys know what that is?
Yes. I do.
Art, do you know?
I'm sure
The
Art
metrical-
does.
Right now, that doesn't ring a bell for some reason.
Okay, so let's look at CM in the left-hand column. It says Asman, you see that one? That's the tune to Oh 4,000 Tongues. If you look in the second column, the New Britain, page 671, is Amazing Grace. And so what it's saying is, now back to the CM, is that there are 8 syllables in the first line of poetry, 6 syllables in the second line of poetry, 8 and then 6. Can you count it? Let's sing Amazing Grace. Count it with your fingers. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. 8. That saved a wretch like me. 6. Do you see how that works? So this is the number of syllables, because you're going to have that many notes to sing it. If you don't have enough notes, it's going to be a real problem. Or if you have too many, nobody knows what to do.
And any other hymn that meets that metric scale you can use that music for, right?
To some extent, we're going to see how that sometimes doesn't work and sometimes does. But that's a really important thing to do it, and you'll see why in a little while. So then here are the tune names. So if you say, let's say you like a tune, well, where is it? And because it may not be with the words you know.
Amazing Grace is really New Britain.
Yeah, that's the real name of it. Mm-hmm. But you can see some. Let's see if we can find with 2 numbers. Bickford has 2. Bangor has 2. Alice has 2. Aberystwyth has 3. Let's do Aberystwyth. That one's kind of interesting. You're going to know that one. Well, we don't know how to look it up because we just know we like the tune. So, what page? 379. So, God is love, and heaven adore him. God is love, right?
Yeah.
It's also 511. Holy Spirit, ever living as and 523. Glorious things of thee are spoken. We use Land of Rest like all the time, by the way. It's like,
And that's not the one we usually use for glorious things, is it?
I don't think so. And
Glorious things for thee are, I can't sing.
yeah, right, that one.
Yeah.
But the one we use was Land of Rest because it just seemed to work for everything that we were ready to do. So it's almost like we want to sing it every Sunday, which I'm trying not to do. I'm trying to do every tune we like, plus a few others that other people like that aren't too weird. That's part of my criteria. If I can't sing it, no one can sing it. So, right? Okay. So that's the tunes. So they can have different texts. Then we have script. We have the indexed first lines. This is only useful in that you kind of remember the words of some tune, and then you say, "Oh, what is that tune name or whatever?" So this is to help you kind of remember. But it's not very useful. Other than that, then what's interesting is here's the liturgical and subject index. So here they are by the daily office. I'm not sure you guys know what that is. Then the church calendar, so forth, like Advent or Christmas. But then they have other ones like for peace, for the sick, mission of the church. So if we need some Sunday mission of the church, someone's rogation, I'm not even sure what that is. Oh, maybe giving a crown. And let's say we want peace after some event or something like that. Well, here are some ones we can go to immediately. So they're really talking about the text, aren't they? Not the tunes.
Yeah, there.
Right? They're talking about, it's always about the text, the hymn. You pick the hymn by the text first, not by what you like to sing. Then you try to find something you like to sing to fit the texts that are available. And I'll show you an example of how that doesn't work when you don't do that. Okay, then this is interesting. Let's say that we have these readings and we concentrate on the Old Testament or whatever. Well, we can look up the Old Testament and which hymns reference it.
Now, I didn't know that was in there at all.
Isn't that cool? So, of course, you love Job 33:4, right? So you would use 505 for that, right, Helen?
I don't know, what is that? I might be for.
And Art loves Leviticus. That's his favorite book, I know. You probably did an adult forum on that and barely survived. All right, so that's some interesting ones. So we have the copyright, the sources of the text, sources of the music. We have the metrical index, number of syllables. We have the tunes that are being used. We have the first lines to remember what in the heck it is that we like. We have scriptural references. We have the subjects and topics. The next thing we have to do when we're doing hymns is we go to something called the lectionary, which is a list of readings. And we read things on a cycle that we see. They don't always make sense together, but usually you can do something. And so you look at those and try to pick hymns that reflect that or magnify that. And what we see is going back to the 16th century, hymns before that weren't really sung by congregations much in the Catholic Church. And there was something called the Protestant Reformation. And Martin Luther and Calvin and others were trying to make it so that people could participate in the singing. Now, there are differences between them, what they think should be sung. But, and so Luther wanted people to be participants and all of us kind of priests and saying these words. And the reason is he brought rhetoric back from the ancient Greek. And if you look at Aristotle's text, he has three things that persuasion's done. And so Martin Luther saw music as being the most powerful tool of God. And it has the purposes of persuasion. It's not just because it's nice to sing stuff. And these things are that it has meaning and it convinces you of things. Another one is that it touches your heart. And the last one is that it's beautiful. So just because you like the tune isn't good enough. It has to also have meaning. And ideally, it touches your heart. You know that if you are convincing someone, if you touch their emotions first, you've got them, right? Or if you want them to do something, you can make them angry, right? It's not a very logical response, but it makes people do stuff, right? But that can be useful too. That's emotions are a tool of God too. And then logic, there are hymns teaching doctrine, like they'll say, here is the Trinity, and they'll have 3 verses, 1 on each, and describe them. Martin Luther wrote down the Lord's Prayer as a hymn called Vater Unser, so that people could sing it and memorize the prayer. And it was done in the Catechism. I don't know if you know the Catechism. You'll say the first line of the Lord's Prayer, and then you'll say Luther's explanation of it, memorized. Then the next line. And so Luther condensed that into a hymn where then he took all this paragraphs of explanation that he had for people who didn't really understand at the time into one line of poetry. The first line of the Lord's Prayer. That's pretty amazing, actually. And teaching the Lord's Prayer through singing. And then it's to a tune, and that's beautiful. And so Luther saw it as a way of really amplifying the word. So what was I going to say? He saw it as quite powerful, and he saw beauty as something that we could borrow from anywhere. And this is where we have a difference between Luther and Calvin. Luther felt that the devil shouldn't have all the good tunes, is what he said. So he borrowed things from the bars, yes, and from love songs. The Lenten hymn, bum, bum, ba, da, 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 is a love song from the 16th century. Everybody knew it, and they thought, well, we're going to turn that love song into a Lenten hymn. Wow, about crucifixion.
I think I heard an anecdote about the early English hymnal, and there was a preface in it that said, if singing these tunes reminds you of some words you heard otherwise, think not on them.
Yes, it's hard to do that. What is called something textuality, that you can, if you're smart, use the text of one tune with the text that you want to use and put them together to make associations. That's a practice that's been done since the 11th century or 12th century by monks and stuff.
I think that warning is there because a lot of the early hymn tunes came out of bars.
Well, they're pretty good. People like them. But yeah, that's one way to do it. So Luther did that. Now, Calvin didn't like that. And what he said about music is the following. Music is a poison. It's very powerful, like deadly nightshade. We must be careful with it. We must be careful with it. With deadly nightshade, we can solve heart problems. We can solve all sorts of issues with the body. But too much, you kill the patient. And he considered it very serious to do music. He was a good musician. He liked music, but in church, he knew that putting words, especially words that you compose that are not perfect from God, and people haven't singing it, is like putting something with that poison. And that's why it's highly restricted in that church to the Psalms. And that's called the Psaltery. Right? And so that's why we have like Psalm 99 and Psalm 66. And you've seen that, Psalm 100 and stuff like that in our hymnal. That's from Calvin's tradition. Isn't that interesting? So, yeah. And also, God didn't make instruments, did he? So don't allow them. The only instrument he made was the voice. So there are very strong attitudes, and people have real fights over this sort of thing.
My dad took exception to that idea that God didn't make instruments, because in the Bible it says, everything that hath breath, praise the Lord. And he said that proves that God made pipe organs.
I love it. I'm for pipe organs, actually. Yeah. So clearly I'm not Calvinist, right? Or, yeah. Okay. So that's just an introduction to the hymnal. Now, what I want to do is go through Amazing Grace for a moment here and just look at the hymn page. For Helen, maybe this is a lot of review, but it could be kind of interesting little things here and there. There are many significant things on here. We do have the music, which is problematic, actually. And then we have the words, don't we? The hymn. So we have the hymn tune, and we have at the bottom, it says the music, the hymn tune is called New Britain. They tell you where it's from and who adapted the poem. Then they go through who harmonized it. The tune, changed the tune. Then we have the words, John Newton wrote it. Now, what's interesting about this is he wrote the words in like, it was like 1778 or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
The first time it was put with that tune that we know is 1831.
Well,
They were singing a whole bunch of other tunes to it. So like most ministers, they happen to be good at writing poems, but they don't always sing so well. So they write the poem and hope that some musicians will put it together for them. So they just keep on trying different ones. And then at one point, someone stuck it with that one and everybody said, that works pretty well. We're going to do that. So in some ways, we see the tune and the text as a marriage. You go on a lot of dates, they don't work out. But when you meet the right one, you stick with them.
yeah.
Right? And that was a good one. That was good marriage. There are some bad marriages with hymn tunes too, where you go, this doesn't work. I'm trying to sing these words and I just can't do it, right? You've had that experience too? Especially when we change the text from something you know, and then there's something like just a word emphasis or something that's not in the right place, and you're just like, where do I put this vowel? And you're just kind of lost when you change the tune text. Not always because it's unfamiliar, but it's sometimes that it doesn't quite work. You know, it was a fun date to go to the movie, but you don't want to spend your life with that person. So those are there, but what you'll see in these hymnals, like if you go to the Christian Science Church, anybody been there?
Yep.
I was an organist for Christian Science Church for 3 months. So what they do is before they sing each hymn from a hymnal like this, they read it as a poem. So everybody understands what they're going to sing and what they're trying to memorize. Then they sing the tune. They don't just sing the tune with the text. Mary Baker Eddy, the founder of that church, was a poet. In other words, a hymn writer. So here's Amazing Grace. Okay, so we're going to just look at some other things on the hymn. So we have the lyrics or words. We have the music. We have who did the text, who did the music. At the top, do you see it says the Christian life?
Mm-hmm.
Right? We saw an index of subjects, didn't we? So it's in the part of the hymnal, hopefully, that's called the Christian life, or it might be labeled that somewhere else. But this is telling you how it could be used. So it doesn't put Christmas, for instance. That would be inappropriate, wouldn't it?
Right.
Even though it's kind of amazing, isn't it? And so we'll see sometimes someone will say, wow, the reading has amazing in it, so we'll do Amazing Grace. Well, what happens if it's about the birth of Christ? That's not good. Or you have something like, it has the word stone in this reading, so we're going to go find stone in this text over here. This actually happens sometimes in this suggested hymns for the Sunday. So I avoid doing stuff like that. So I try to make it so the hymn has like the feeling of something or so forth. So that's one reason that we have a hymn around the Gospels. We're doing what Luther said. We're doing something beautiful. We're capturing your heart through that beautiful thing, and we're making you receptive to the Word of God. That's why the hymn is there. It's not because we had a whole bunch of things before it and we're so bored about hearing some words. It's because we're helping people get into that mood and convince them with everything we can. Beauty, the heart, and the mind. So this is why we're very careful about cutting stanzas. So you'll see that I'll have like stanzas 1, 2, and 5, and 1 and 5 and stuff like that. And you're like, why did you do that? Or like 1 and 4, and there are like 6 of them and stuff like that. And then and then some of them we just do 1 and so forth. There are some hymns that are about the Trinity. What happens if you cut one of the verses?
Well, you gotta probably have 3. Yeah.
Well, if you're listening to the hymn, you got to have 3. You can't just talk about 2, right?
Right.
Mhm.
So people who are like, oh, we're just going to fill up the service with some music and whatever, and it sounds like we should just have about 4.5 of them. So let's just do 4 verses of this one and then just stop playing.
Well, why are there asterisks not like this Amazing Grace on 5?
So it may be something that's added by Edwin Othello XL. You see that John Reese. There's someone who may have added some verses. This happens to many tunes. Some poet says, I like this a lot, but it really needs this or whatever. We have that happen a lot with like, O Come, Emmanuel.
Mm-hmm.
Like 10 zillion. They're like 11 verses or something of that. Right?
Yeah.
So, and then we also have things like that little mark there, 1, 2, 3. They're suggesting that it could work where you only sing 3 verses. So why don't you stop there?
Okay.
An interesting thing that you will see in hymns generally is that the text will say something positive at the beginning. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. It'll do something positive for a while, and then about 2/3 of the way, it'll say something negative. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come, blah, blah, blah. It's very dark. And that's a rhetorical thing where you try to prove something by its opposite in poetry and speech. So you might say, children, let's go into the car and see the bus, it's a safe place, and so forth. Blah, 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 blah. Don't walk into the street. The street will smash you. And then you go, oh, remember the bus, how beautiful the bus is, and like that. Well, hymns often do that. You can hear Christmas hymns almost always have a dark verse. Like even in Joy to the World, one of them's about snares and stuff like that. Have you looked at Joy to the World and thought about it?
What number is it?
Don't worry, it's here. See,
Oh.
Joy to the world, the Lord. Just turn your head a
But
little
I
bit.
can see this better.
Right. So joy to the world, joy to the world. Now the next one. No more let sins and sorrows grow, nor thorns infest the ground. He comes to make, it's just really bad imagery, right? That's normal. So in Christmas hymns, they're not happy the whole time. Almost none of them are that way except Hark the Herald Angels. But then we have like 100 Christmas hymns in this book, and every one of them has a negative verse in it. Isn't that interesting? So you can just hear the poem's effect. But there are other ways to do things. Where is Amazing Grace? Here it is. So then we have other important things, like at the bottom it says common meter, which is 8686 in terms of the number of syllables that we counted. And we have the tempo 108. So we have a lot of information there, don't we?
Mhm.
What's that? Yeah,
Yes.
we have all the information, but it's not very useful in a way by itself. We need those indices to use that information. So we talked about when to cut some stanzas, when to play faster and slower. We could talk about that, but it's written in the hymn book. They tell you why do you do it faster or slower. And we talked about, do you just pick hymns you like for the Sunday and just put them together? Things like that. And so there are different ways to design the service. Sometimes I design a service that starts dark and goes to light. Sometimes I have loud and loud on the outside, like bookends, something in the middle. There are all sorts of different ways to do this. There's a special service that starts really happy and gets sad. Do you know which service that is? Helen?
I'm
Do you
sorry.
know-
I was trying to think of something else. My
Okay,
mind
it's okay.
slipped off. What was the question?
Do you guys know, most of the services have some design. And I said, sometimes I design it from quiet to louder, kind of getting more exciting.
yes,
Out. Sometimes
Light
it's loud to
dark.
bring them in and bring them out. And then there's something quiet. But there's one service that starts really fun and comes out dark. Which service is that?
It could be the funeral service.
Nope.
No, that actually starts out.
That's a
dark.
celebration.
That's the opposite. You go, oh, so that you do the opposite with that. Funeral services are supposed to be designed more like what I said. Start with a positive thought, say what could have happened to them, and then say that they're saved at the end.
Well, I always think of the service that starts most gloriously is Easter.
Yeah, but it ends happy.
Yeah, it doesn't end dark. I don't.
There's one that ends dark. So Christ is doing something.
Good
Everybody's
Friday.
really excited about it, and then at the end of that experience, it's not so good.
Palm Sunday.
Yeah, Palm Sunday is a real downer service.
Yeah.
So it starts happy with them coming in, and then
And you walk out moping. And the readings are not so great in terms of your feeling about things either. It's the reason for this change in the service was actually very interesting. It's because a lot of people don't go to Maundy, Thursday, and Good Friday services. They just go to Easter and Palm Sunday. So what it is an attempt to get those readings in on Palm Sunday before they leave.
Mhm.
Interesting, isn't it? But what the heck do you do musically like that? Because when you end downer, it's really down in music.
or like in Advent and Lent when we didn't used to do all the minor key things in Advent, but that's kind of been a recent thing. Art,
It's not recent, actually. It's been for
I
most
mean,
of the
for
century.
us, for
Oh, okay.
us.
Yeah. Well, the association of minor with sad is different for about 300 centuries. I mean, 3 centuries, 300 years. So the thing called Dorian mode, which we hear as being minor,
Mhm.
wasn't heard as sad. It was heard as being serious. Like you're talking about something that you want people to pay attention to. It's not, it maybe not even solemn, but it's serious. You can be in minor. But it wasn't sad. There's a different mode that's for sad. And one that's really for sad is called Phrygian mode. And that's what, ba da 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 da. It's not even in minor. It's in a weird mode. Dun, da 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 da. Da 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 da. That's the ending note. What the heck, right? That's not minor. It's not major either. So they had a system of 8 to 12 different things instead of just 2, major and minor. So what you're doing is you're taking hymns from a different time period, which are different cultures.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if we take even a musical from the 1940s or 50s, and we played it in the 60s, or we played it in the 90s, it's really jarring sometimes how different it is. And that's only like 30 years. So some of the musical symbols that we think of as minor, as sad or whatever, have a different feeling. What's really interesting is there's a pretty famous tune called Alle Menschen müssen sterben, which is all men must die. They're like grass and they go into the ground. That's the text. We call it all men are mortal because Americans can't stand bloody texts. But Germans just say it. It's in a major key. It's in C major. It sounds super happy.
Like be happy while you're dying or something.
Well, just think about that. And then you think, that's really bizarre. And everybody liked this tune. What the heck? Well, then you just realize I'm from a different culture.
Yeah.
200 years later.
Yeah. Good point.
It's like going back and looking in archaeology and looking at little things out of a box or something like that. And wow, they used a slide rule, you know. So people who know these other musical styles hear it really differently than you do. You know, like when I hear some of these minor ones, I hear it as being triumphant. And there's all sorts of ones. There's a famous Easter tune that's in minor. that's super exciting, and you hear the Bach setting of it, it's super exciting again, and you hear super exciting, but it's a minor. It's a really strong minor because it's like it's a serious thing, resurrecting someone, you know. So it's actually in Dorian, so it's not in a minor key.
And which one is that?
Let's see if I can remember it. It's I can find it real quickly here, I think. It's right around, you know how you forget something right when someone asks it, right?
I'm sorry.
Well, you wouldn't have known at all if you hadn't asked it. Oh, you know, now the green blade rises is in Dorian, actually. But on earth has dawned this glorious day. That is in Dorian. And another one, the one that Bach did. Let's see if I can find it. I played it on Easter 2 years ago. Oh, this is the famous Easter tune. Bum, 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 da, 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 da. Sounds like minor to you.
Mhm.
Da, da, da. The words at the end are dun, 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 dun. Loud songs of Alleluia. Dun, dun, dun. Alleluia. That's the tune that's been around in the Catholic Church, in our church, for 500 years. Every Easter it was done. It's super happy, of course. I mean, there's another one. Bum, 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 bum. But let's see if we can find. Bum, bum, bum. That's how it starts. Oh, well, I can't. I can pull it out. I know where it is. But in any case, you can see that we go to the text first and that kind of stuff. So what I wanted to do is go back to this now and give you some interesting things of mixing these and finding some interesting stuff. So let's say that we have a lectionary and we need to use the following text. For thy blessed saints, a noble throng, who fell by fire and sword. Because we're going to talk about it in the sermon. For James, who left his father's side, besides dead, he knelt beside it, and we learned to drink the cup. Wow, that's serious. But it's in a major key. For thy blessed saints, a noble throng. It's in common meter, which means it has how many syllables?
Common.
CM at the bottom.
Yes.
Do you remember?
Well, is it the 8-6?
Yeah, it's 8686. Let's count. For thy blessed saints, a noble throng. 8. Who fell by fire and sword. 6. Or early died or flourished long. Oops, that should be 8. Praise thy name, O Lord. Well, so
Yeah, that's
now,
right. I mean, that's or early died and flourished long. Yeah, early died and flourished long. That's
I must have counted wrong. Oh, that's because.
8.
All right. So, do we know any other hymns with 8686?
Amazing Grace.
Very good. We just looked at that one. Sing Amazing Grace, but Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. Now sing these words. For thy blessed saints, a noble throng, who fell by fire and sword.
Yes.
It actually works very well, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. But you said sometimes it doesn't always.
Well, now let's do it to 4,000 tongues to sing, which is also 8686. But let's do it 4,000. Bum 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 bum. With me. Oh, for 1,000 tongues to sing my Redeemer's praise. Let's do it. Oh, for 1,000 songs to sing my dear Redeemer's praise. Okay, now let's take this text. For thy blessed saints, a noble throng who fell by fire and sword. Oh my God, that's hard to sing. Try it. For thy blessed saints, a noble throng who fell by fire and sword.
Holy
We
thy
died
Lord, we
We
thy
praise thy
name,
name.
O that fits.
Well, you have
I don't
to,
know. I think it's hard because like some of the words don't hit the right notes. Do you know what I
you
mean?
have
You know.
the lengths of the notes a little bit.
So this was a short-term date. They saw each other and ate pizza and said that was the last date with 4,000 tongues. But the other one could work quite well, maybe even better. This might be the perfect tune for it, but we don't know it. So this happened recently, and I put it to 4,000 tongues. You're thinking probably, why did he do that? But that's why I did it. And I would do that with this one for Amazing Grace, because nobody knows this tune, and because they don't know this tune, they're distracted by the music from the words. That means they're not doing what the hymn's supposed to do.
Yeah, because I can't really, if I'm trying to follow.
I know you're struggling. You can barely do it.
I can't
right?
do the music and the words both.
Well, most people can't. I mean, even if a singer can sing it really well, they can't understand what they're saying because of the setting of the way the poem is written. See, each line of the stanza is written on a different line of music. No one can read that well. Visually, it's very hard. The hymnal that I showed you, the German hymnal, has it as a poem. So you can understand that that's something that you're saying about in the church, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just a very visual part of it is bad for singing hymns, actually. Don't quote me outside this seminar here that it's actually a bad way of doing it. The best way is to give people the words without a tune. But because we want them to sing musically and stuff, and especially because I'm Methodist originally, and Episcopals are kind of related to them, we like to sing, and we like to sing in harmony, and that's beautiful and inspiring. And so we sing it in harmony a lot of times, and we like the music, and that's our tradition, and that's our right, you know? But as far as understanding the poem, it's pretty hard. So the Christian Scientists just figured out how to do it, where they just read the poem first, and then you sing it. Talk about a long service.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was pretty neat, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, now let's go back to Amazing Grace. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Good, that's 8686. Now go to Joy to the World. It's 8686. Sing Amazing Grace.
Joy to the
No.
world.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Just go ahead, sing it. Try to sing it now. Amazing grace.
How sweet the sound. I can't sing. A wretch like me.
That's it. Art, can you do it?
My poor old.
I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. But that's
Here we
terrible.
It sounds like a musical, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I mean, it's so over the top. This couple had so much fun, but you don't want them to get together again.
Yeah.
And everybody associates Joy to the World so strongly to Christmas, it's really problematic to put it to Amazing Grace.
Mm-hmm.
Art, do you want to give it a try?
What, sing this to the hymn tune of Amazing Grace?
Yes.
Yeah. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room, and heaven and nature sing.
Okay, let's stop there. Can you imagine if I made that Joy to the World for Christmas service?
Oh, everybody would be so sad.
I think they'd be more than sad. There's a word that rhymes with sad. Okay, so these are marriages are like two animals that got together and made they shouldn't have gotten together. Like a horse and a goat or something like that, right? It's cute, isn't it? This could be a fun party trick for a choir or something like that, is to get the hymnal and have everybody sing the tunes with different texts. Can you think of any time last year and the year before, actually, where I changed the text to Christmas tunes?
You changed the text or the
No, I set the text to Christmas tunes. I took words that were not.
I should, if you did it. But I can't remember. Whoops.
Do you remember the Christmas concert sing-along?
Uh-huh.
All right, what do we sing? We sing Christmas tunes?
Mm-hmm.
Do we sing Christmas words? No, we sing Halloween words.
Oh, when we did that.
Now, yeah.
The Halloween thing, yeah.
Do you see how funny it is? It's like Amazing Grace, the Joy to the World, isn't it?
Yes.
And some people really didn't like the end of one of the Halloween concerts because I put together one of the Christmas tunes and it ended up being a patriotic song. It was the wrong holiday. It was July 4th.
Oh.
Do you remember that? Because it was coming to Election Day, so I had everybody sing about the the bombs in the air and all that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah.
People didn't like that one because it tricked them, and it was actually a trick that really tricked them. So that's Amazing Grace. And then there's another one. Let's say, oh gosh, it's hard to read that way, isn't it? Let's see if I can rotate it.
Oh, I've got
Okay.
Yeah,
Read this one. Alone thou goest forth, O Lord, in sacrifice to die. Let's say that again. Alone thou goest forth, O Lord, in sacrifice to die. I need to do it again. Alone thou goest forth, O Lord, in sacrifice to die. Okay, let's put it to Amazing Grace. Go ahead.
Alone thou goest forth, O Lord, in sacrifice to die.
That doesn't seem right, does it?
No, because it just goes with Amazing Grace.
Well, Amazing Grace tune could be used on other things.
Oh, I know.
Right. But now, what was the other tune that we sang? Do you remember? Bum, 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 dun, 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 dun.
4,000 times.
Let's try that. Alone thou goest forth, O Lord, in sacrifice to die. Yes, how does that sound?
Not to us who pass unheeding by.
Wow, that was good, wasn't it?
That one did.
You guys are good. Yeah, it works, doesn't it? It
I
works.
just have to hold the computer up so I can see it.
I understand. Helen, you sang it really well too.
When
So I know you can be in the choir now.
Oh no! Oh no!
You could be in the choir.
Service. Remember, I go to early church.
Yeah, but I know you can sing now. But you did a great job putting those together, and Art did too. It's amazing. But Amazing Grace. But one of the things is that I'm using really familiar tunes, aren't I?
Yes.
Right. And so never do I use a tune that you guys don't know. It's going to be a tune that we've sung 10 zillion times. Everybody knows this tune. And then we put a text to it. And so if it's one that's kind of, I don't do it. So generally, I will err towards the conservative side, right? But one thing you want to think about in the hymnal is the smartest and most talented musicians of these Anglican, Episcopal, and Catholic churches helped make this hymnal. That means they didn't make this hymn, and their point was that everybody can sing them. That this is for congregational singing, not for choirs, not for anybody practicing. Now, just a second here. So let me go one more step, which is this. They did not put any hymn in there that they thought would just be difficult. Like they just wanted to put a bad hymn in the hymnal. Or I wanted to like really trip up those churches that don't practice enough or something. Nobody had an evil thought like that.
No.
Right? And so sometimes it's that you're just not of a tradition or have that background, or maybe you don't sing it in this region or whatever. It doesn't mean it's not familiar to other people. And also it could be something really exciting rather than something that take it as an exciting challenge. And so sometimes there's just not a good choice. And so we do something that's less familiar, but quite singable. You'd be surprised, like in the Midnight Clear and stuff like that, are super hard melodies. Some of these melodies that we sing all the time, we would never be able to sight read them, but we sing them all the time. I mean, we sing them all the time. And some of these are quite simple, but not familiar. We have the problem of it's distracting you from what you're saying. But then we also have the problem that if you just do the ones that people know, we're going to keep on rotating through about 5 to 10 hymns, and it's super boring. And that's one way to lose everybody in a church.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there's something in the Catholic Church that was really important for 1,000 years and continues to be. There are two parts of the Mass. One's called the Ordinary, and one's called the Propers. The Ordinary is called the Kyrie, Gloria, Agnus Dei, Credo, Agnus Dei, and then so you see those are things that we sing too, aren't they? And they're meant to be ordinary, which means they sing it every Sunday. They don't change them very much. That's so people are familiar and they feel comfortable. And you can't have everything be new every Sunday. People are going to just really hate it, and so are the musicians. And it's hard to come up with that much good music. So there's some things that we just want to keep on doing again and again. But then there's the other part called the Propers. And the Propers are whatever is proper to that Sunday. You know, if it's the Feast of St. James or whatever, then we do the tune for Feast of St. James or whatever it is. So those are the things that change out. And so the Propers for our service really are these hymns.
Now, do you pick those out each Sunday?
I only suggest them.
Oh, okay.
So when I pick them out, there are suggestions, and they're all familiar to me. Like some of them, I really know them very well, but may not be to you. And then some are quite familiar to you too. So I get what is the best tune, what is the best text, and then also to other considerations such as, do you want to have something that talks about love, or you want to have something about diversity, or you want something, whatever these topics are, or have multiple topics, whatever. I try to make it really, and then the design of this thing to fit the whole service. I mean, I have a beautiful services that are designed. If you start looking at the design, and then you see what I do in organ music, but it may be something that you guys don't know, or something like that, or not the version you know, or something like that. It goes in front of all the staff. And they have a list of everything, and Sally goes through it. And whenever it's something she just thinks it's not that is good, it's a super smart idea, but I don't think we should do this, or, this one might be better or whatever. We usually change it to that better one. So, and she really looks through it. All the staff look through it, and the pastor right now is very hands-on with everything. And so she goes through it and says, I think this hymn's too long. We can't use this hymn. And they say, well, let's use verses 1, 2, and 5 instead of this. And then we negotiate through, because she agrees it's a great hymn, but we can't sit there all day. That was actually just recent. Do you remember we did verse 1 and 5 today?
Yes.
There's a reason. It's because she didn't like that.
Yeah, it would have been a long one. And my father never did sing growing up, even though he's very musical and played several instruments, but he didn't sing. And we'd be going on and we'd get to like the fourth verse and he'd look over at our hymnals and say, how many more?
Yeah, but it also says that his mind's on the wrong thing.
Yeah.
It's on the beauty. It's not on what is being sung, what is the word, and what feeling should I be getting from this? I mean, we meditate to music that goes over and over, don't we?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't drive, I mean, we actually do it to ourselves. Taizé, we sing the same thing like 20 times, don't we? We don't even change the words. Praise courses we repeat all the time too. Well, at least these poems are pretty well written. They have 20 verses or whatever. So we just need to have a more sympathetic attitude towards some things that were really picked by very good poets. I mean, that were by excellent poets with excellent music, put together the marriage they thought was the best for it, and the best musicians that we can find to select them. That's what's in the hymnal. So we have to have sympathy, like, why is this here? And give it a try. And it doesn't mean we have to like it. It's just that we give it a chance. That's all. But in general, you don't want the music to be distracting. And that means not too unfamiliar. And also the words too complicated too, or something like that. So once again, yeah, I select them. I've been selecting hymns for 30 years. And I have taught church music for 3 times and designed the courses and taught it with a rhetorician who is a Presbyterian who has taught rhetoric for 40 years. That was my teacher, my co-teacher the first time I did it at Texas A&M. So it's not that I am just putting them together randomly or something like that.
Oh,
But
I knew
there's a lot-
it wasn't random. That I knew. I just didn't know who
The
actually,
reason.
you have a range of here are 3 or 4. Which one do you choose?
It's actually very difficult. There's some Sundays where you're like, I don't want to sing about this. Every one of them is so depressing. And then you're like, why do you pick this really great hymn, but it doesn't have anything to do with it? Well, that's why. I just couldn't stand it. I mean, like today, the gospel wasn't the greatest one for singing to.
Yeah.
Just think about it. Do you really want to sing about that?
People being
and so-
killed and bonked over the head. And
It took me like 30 minutes to find a hymn that would actually even work. Just to do stuff like that, just to get 2 verses is really hard. And you're like knocking out verses of these and thinking, what can I do? And like some of these things that I design a service takes hours sometimes just searching through. So sometimes I have to go to these other resources and pull something from like a 19th century hymnal, some text. And like there's sometimes when you see these hymns, you're like, it's not in a hymnal. Why do you do that? Well, it's because I was pretty desperate. And then there are other ones like Lavis, which we don't know very well, but we really want to have more of the African American tradition these days.
mm-hmm.
And it was designed by our church for our church. So we put those in, even though they're not familiar, we're hoping that the congregation will give them a chance. There's some beautiful music from the African American tradition.
Oh gosh, yes.
But you see what I'm saying? Just because it's not familiar doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, but it can be over top sometimes, which happens. Sometimes I make a mistake and do too much for people. So there's this balance of trying to do the new, the old, try to do the familiar, try to talk about the gospel, especially when it's super weird or hard, or the service doesn't actually make sense already with all these readings. And then you want to design a service where at the end they have a good thought and they're going out with that thought in the shape of this service. And then you have the personal preferences of all sorts of people. Gerald doesn't come from an Episcopal background. I actually come from Methodist, though I've been in Episcopal a long time, and Catholic and Lutheran. And we all know different tunes and all kind of stuff, and we're trying to get along, and we get along really well. But then we have just the words, like, are these beautiful words? And, is this a good marriage? These things. The number of things that we're considering is huge, and we just can't satisfy all of it all the time.
No.
And sometimes we just kind of miss still, but we try. And so it goes through a vetting process. I have that experience in 30 years, but I make mistakes all the time, especially for a new congregation. How can I know what they know?
We don't want you to go to a new congregation.
No, I'm saying you guys are still a new congregation to me. Even 3 or 4 years is not that much of a community. You have a huge repertoire of music, you have traditions that I have to learn. And that is part of what the music director has to adjust to. Right?
You
He
did a
can't
good
just come
job.
in and tell you guys how music should be done because I learned it in, London or something. You're going to sing like London people. That's not right, right? And this is what Episcopal is. I'm going to tell you what it is or something. That is not my attitude. I have to adjust to the culture here. But I can bring some new things in. And I have this experience. It's my experience, but Gerald has his experience. We have the desires of the pastors, and there's more than one pastor basically here, all the ones unpaid, right? And then Sally's super smart and knows what she could do a lot of this stuff. She's really talented, and they're all looking over it, putting their stuff in there. And sometimes they just tell me, we're not doing this one. And then we can have one of them come in and like it's Wednesday, I picked this beautiful thing and they say, I decided not to talk about anything there. Like, no, we have to publish it in like 5 hours, but we will find something for them. Right? That's my attitude. It's not that we have to keep the music because I made this beautiful thing and you don't appreciate it. No, it's how can I make that service great for that pastor and for that congregation with the amount of time I have and the resources of the hymnals that I have, including the 1982, and the repertory that the people here know, and the text that fits that sermon or whatever it is. Or the prayer happens to be baptism or whatever, and they happen to be Greek or stuff like that. We just have to adjust the best we can. And so sometimes we just change it around and sometimes we have these arguments in staff, like you'll be like, no one knows that one. And it could be the pastor. She's like, it's so unsingable, blah, blah, blah. It's just, we have to change that one. And so I like that hymn. We've been singing it for 40 years. Blah, blah, blah. She goes, it's this. And she sings it. And then Becky says, well, I don't know. I like these ones where you strum to them and blah, blah, blah. There's this other one I know. And we have this discussion, and it can be a long discussion as we pull apart whatever I suggested. So that's the answer to the question you asked very quickly. I think when you walked by the keyboard when I was playing outside, I think. Then you ask, like, who picks us hymns or something? And I said, I do. And someone asked that, and well, yeah, I picked them in the sense that I make some recommendations or suggestions, right? But they're not necessarily what we end up with. Sometimes we end up with none of them.
Different thing. Leon,
yeah.
I'm afraid I have to go. My son's coming to help me move boxes, and he doesn't have very long. But I apologize for
no,
but
it's fine.
Or I can carry these boxes in the house.
Oh, I wasn't planning on going more than an hour, but we got excited. So I appreciate you taking the extra 15 minutes, and I wish I could have done some group work and stuff like that. I had planned to actually do it that way, to split you guys in groups electronically, but I need more people than two.
Yes. Well,
groups of one don't work too well.
Of us.
It's great because I got to really know you better, and and it's just great to have everybody's input and share some thoughts about how I do things. So you just have some sympathy for me.
Now, you do a wonderful job, and we thank you for all you do.
Oh yeah, we really.
And the thing is,
the doorbell's ringing.
We're all working together. So have a great afternoon, and we'll see you later, Helen.
Okay.
Art, do you have any questions, or do you want to do anything, or you feel good?
Oh, I feel good. I feel a nap coming on. I've been in church for a long time, and the change doesn't bother me too much. When we changed from Greek to Latin, that was a little bit hard to take.
What do you mean? Greek to Latin?
No, when I started out in church, everything was in Greek. I'm that old.
Okay, I understand now. That is hilarious. Okay.
I'll leave you. Thanks again. Are you going to do another one sometime soon?
Oh, were you thinking about the recording that we did with the plain chant? With the choir?
No, ask you if you're going to do another class like this sometime soon.
I hadn't planned on it, but if you want one, we could talk about it.
I would. I think it's very good, and since you had a fairly intense but concentrated attendance today, might be good to try it again.
Well, I'd be glad to do it again, and it probably would be, I'd probably present it better another time and more condensed instead of taking an hour and 15 minutes, maybe
Yeah.
try to get it to 45 minutes, and then people have more time to like talk during it and have some questions and give some thoughts and opinions, which
Yeah.
would be helpful to me and everybody, I think. So
Yeah.
I would be glad to do it again. You can suggest it to whoever's in control of the church. Who knows who that is? God.
Well,
Whoever is organizing this forum, you can just suggest it to them, and I'm open to it. The same topic or a different one.
okay.
Yeah. But did you learn anything new?
A little bit. I have to recall that my father was an Episcopal priest and an extremely accomplished musician. In fact, he would occasionally chant the entire service from beginning to end. So, and my mother was the organist. So this stuff I teethed on.
Yeah, you did.
But I am getting to the age where I've forgotten more than I've ever known. So it's good to see.
It seems like that happens towards the end of, as we get older. Yes.
I'll hit the leave button here now.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure. And I'll see you soon.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.